Hey everybody, Mark Agnesi here for the All Guitar Network. I'm here with Ted Kornblum from Magnatone Amplifiers. Thanks for coming in to hang out with us today, show us some of these cool amps.
It's an honor. It's an honor.
Almost 80 years, right?
Magnatone
Has been around. Can you explain a little bit of the heritage of the company and then kind of how you became involved?
Magnatone started around 1937 in Southern California, so you're right. You're right here in the home of Magnatone. And my grandfather was the distributor of Magnatone, but never owned the brand. And so I was fortunate enough to find that nobody owned it and wanted to have my own company and wanted to resurrect a brand that was done correctly. In other words, not exploit it, bring it back, nurture it. And I was fortunate enough to find that Magnatone, all the trademarks had been expired. So I basically went on eBay every day for about 25 years. I've owned the name. We've only been at market now about 5. And I bought everything that I could see and find that had Magnatone's lineage to it back to 1937. So I basically have recreated the entire company's product offering of over 400 different Magnatone vintage items.
So Magnatone's been around since 1937. Obviously, it wasn't always like an amplifier company. Was there other stuff, radios, or what? I mean, how did the company
Good question.
start and get into the...
Yeah, 1937, it was making, let's see, coin-operated radios that were used for hotel rooms, because at that time AM radio was the entertainment of the day, and they were making record players that folded up into little nice attaché cases that were for your portable listening music. And then they gradually got into the lap steel and matching amplifier market in the early days of the Hawaiian lap steel. Sol Hopi, you might remember from his Hawaiian music, was one of the first players of Magnatone guitars, which were lap steels. It was around the time of Rickenbacker.
Right around that same...
Yeah.
40s
But
era.
they started out first making coin-operated radios with the lightning bolt logo. So this is from the 30s.
Yeah.
And then the logo on my hat is from the 50s. And so around 1955, they hired an enormous amount of great talented engineers, all Southern California, right across from LAX airport. They had 4 factories. They hired an inventor named Don Bonham, and he invented the pitch-shifting vibrato using a non-moving part. And Magnatone implemented that in their amp first in the history of electric.
That's always when I think Magnatone amps, the vibrato is kind of the key selling point or the real differentiating thing. And really quick, because these amps have tremolo and vibrato
They
on
do.
there.
We love tremolo too.
Can you explain for the people out there who get those two concepts confused, what the difference between the two things are?
Amplitude is louder, softer, and that would be tremolo.
So the tremolo is like a volume swell in and out, where the vibrato,
pitch,
actual shifting of
raising,
pitch.
pitch shifting, exactly right. And the pitch shifting came originally through the development of Magnatone using a part called a varistor. And they were variable resistors, and they were used at the time for television sets to stabilize the picture tube from moving sideways or vertical or horizontal. And these varistors we had to recreate, which are sort of like surge protectors, and they need a tube to power them. So not only are these amps all tube amps, but then they've got the true pitch-shifting vibrato effect using varistors, which need a tube to power them, and they need a pair that match, and then that's for mono. And if it's stereo, you need 2 pair. So which ties into sort of the reason why a lot of people also don't understand why these two beautiful gold chevrons. When you see 2, that means that this amp is a stereo amp. When you see just 1, it means that it's got 1 speaker and it's half of that power.
I want to talk about that too, because the way you guys do stereo on your amps is slightly different than what most people think of
Right.
when they think stereo. Can you explain the concept of kind of the true stereo thing that you guys do with these amps?
Sure. You know, there's 1 preamp in the amp, and so it's a mono signal coming in from your guitar.
You don't have to use a stereo cable.
You
This
do
is
not.
a regular mono
It is.
quarter-inch cable going into your guitar.
And I must give props to Obed Khan, the engineer who designed this amplifier,
Wait a minute.
because
Yeah.
he really said, and it still says, as a guitar player, they think of mono signal into stereo effects. So I give Obed real props for knowing to make it user-friendly so that you don't have to have a stereo Y chord. So it is separate power amps. There's 2 output transformers in each of the stereo models. There's 1 output when it's mono. And It has 2 sets of varistors in there. This particular model here is the panoramic, and it's got 2 10s inside of it, which are ceramic magnets. It also is available as a head or as a combo. The nice thing about this is a combo or as a head, it's got a left and right speaker out on it. So you can actually plug external speakers into this and get larger speakers if you want to, 12s in particular, and then you would be able to have more separation also because the stereo separation.
So there's one preamp that then feeds. So each speaker is getting its own output it's getting its own
full power. So
power.
in this 15 watts, 15 watts. We make a stereo twilighter, which is 22 watts, 22
on
watts.
each side. And then you make mono
Versions of each.
110 or 112 versions.
Exactly.
Of
When you
each
think
as
of
well.
mono, you think of one speaker. When you think
So
of
if you see one chevron on the cabinet,
Yep.
it's a mono amp. If you see the 2 chevrons, it's a true stereo amp.
that is it.
Now, these brown ones here,
Yep.
we also have a black one back here. Are these kind of more the vintage reissue things, or are these all new scratch builds based on old technology, or what is the concept with the brown amps as
Sure.
opposed to the black amp?
The brown amp, which is our traditional, and they're really laid out traditionally with the controls, and it's really a non-master volume, great.
No channel switching.
No channel
anything
switching.
that's- yes.
No channel switching on any Magnatone amps.
Yeah.
That's the reason we'll get to the master collection, which are the black colored amps. But with this, I really give homage and credit to Larry Craig, who is Neil Young's longtime guitar tech of 32 maybe years, 37 years. Larry Craig. I went to Larry and I went to Billy Gibbons as the first 2 people that I told that I owned the name Magnatone. In Larry's case, I said I wanted to bring the brand back, and Neil was excited about it. But really, Larry, I think, had the ability to express what exactly he was looking for. And what Larry gave me was some really great advice, which was coming from a vintage shop, which you are. You don't give wrong advice. You give a straight scoop. What Larry told me was that the amps with vibrato sounded great, and vibrato is an effect that people use for a little bit of a song, and then they turn it off. But it's not meant to be used for the whole song. Not necessarily used for the whole song. So make these amps sound great without any effects, like sound great, like an old Tweed amp or an old black-faced amp. And then when you turn the vibrato on, it doesn't make it sound any less. It makes it sound vibrato. He said, because to be honest with you, Ted, the original Magnatones, as great as they were, they didn't really sound great compared to their competitor at the time, which was probably the Tweed amps or the black-faced amps. So I want you to make them better. So the answer to your question is these are really constructed better. They're still using the same vibrato. It's all tube.
If you took this amp or any of these amps apart and just broke them down to component basis, like absolutely no expense was spared.
That's right.
Absolutely anywhere in the construction of these amps. Talk a little bit. You were just saying they're all hand wired. We were talking about individual light bulbs behind the things, the handles being made by the Amish, the covers for the amps. Go through just a little bit of
That was sort of the
what's
fun.
so special about these and what really
Yeah.
separates these from other.
The parts and pieces that go into these amplifiers are sometimes overlooked because the guitar is always looked upon as being the beautiful rosewood or fingerboard. And so what I wanted to do was do as good a job as our engineers were doing for design and sound. I wanted to do the cosmetics to be equally as beautiful. So I always found that there was sort of a short-sighted view of some manufacturers with the details they'd put on amplifiers or guitars or guitar cases. And those are key things that make the product worth its value and hold up over time. So as an example, when people pick up a leather handle from the old Fender amps, let's say, they would be beautiful.
We tell people to never pick up an amp by a leather handle.
That's
we always
right.
say, hey, pick them
That's
up and
right.
carry them from underneath.
Yeah, that's right. No, we want these amps to be able to be picked up. So the handle in particular I find to be beautiful because it's made by the Amish in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I made 3 trips up there to visit them. They're in the saddle equestrian business by nature, and they're incredible craftsmen. The first thing we did about this was there's solid brass on the ends here, and obviously it's beautiful top grain leather. It would vibrate because I had them put a little piece of metal on the inside of this to give it extra strength, so you could pick them up. But then the metal on the inside was rattling against the brass, so then I had to have them coat the metal insert with rubber so that it wouldn't vibrate. So those little details, and it's embossed with the Magnatone logo. The other thing that's interesting, but does pay credence to the earlier Magnatones, which was they used the same material to cover their amps back in the 50s. This is 100% cotton textile covering. So it is actually 100% cotton, like thread sheets would be for your bed. And then it's made in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I would go visit the factories for each. So I went to visit every one of these factories to go see how they make it. So the factory that makes this is in Knoxville, and it's basically 100% cotton. So as it gets dinged up and scratched, it will tear. Actually, it won't tear. It'll fray. And that's what's nice about an old Tweed amp is that they get better over time. The logo on this is really strong. You could lift this entire amp up.
By the logo.
Yeah. The chevrons are 14 karat gold plated aluminum, and then they have been made satin finished by sandblasting them with glass beads. The knobs on all the amplifiers have an incised black line, so you can actually read where it is. Some of the amps today, they rub off over time, and that black line then goes away. So really what I wanted to do is to make an amp that would last. And then
Tell me about the cover, because the Magnatone cover is pretty bitchy.
The cover, it goes down to the cover. You know, the covers are made by the same company that makes Rolls-Royce automobile top material.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the little details that, and then they deboss the logo, and then they silkscreen the logo into it. They're made by the company that makes automobile seats, actually. I went to companies outside our industry, per se.
Victoria. They made all the old Tweed cases for Fender and all the,
Victoria Luggage is a brand that was expired as well, and so it's.
So you guys own Victoria Luggage?
Yeah,
Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it smells like a new car, literally. I mean, when you smell it.
It's all
and it comes with a 2-button. Any amp that uses a foot switch comes with the foot switch. And cable.
So the cover, the foot switch, all this stuff is included.
It is. We did not want to make products that were like, well, you had to buy an additional item to get this sound. The one unique feature that is optional is on any amp that's got the vibrato, it enables you to have a remote speed pedal that is it's an expression
pedal will do it.
Dunlop makes a good one, and you basically use the expression pedal to remotely control the vibrato or tremolo speed effect. You can set the intensity on the amp and then leave it, but then you can control the vibrato or tremolo. And the light on the foot switch actually blinks.
Like a tap tempo almost. You can't tap it, but it pulses.
Exactly right.
Well, I mean, this stuff's amazing. Why don't we listen to it a little bit here? Let me just see what. Just reverb right now. Let's let them hear the difference between tremolo and vibrato. That right now we're listening to vibrato. You hear the wiggle of pitch is actually being shifted. As opposed to the tremolo. This is more a pulsing of it. And everything's foot switchable. Also, I don't know if you can get down here, you can see exactly the speed. And as you turn up the speed, you see the...
It's really quiet. The amps.
They're dead silent.
That's what's interesting. You asked a question earlier about how quiet they were and what do we do to make them quiet. I think that what we first of all had is a high standard, which was to know that if it's going to be an amp of this level, it needs to be quiet, and if it's in the studio, because it's just there's no excuse for a buzzing amp. The varistors have something to do with it, I think, in that basically this because it's vibrato. And its pitch, the signal's always going through the vibrato signal circuit, but the oscillator or the LFO is not operative when you turn off the vibrato. So in a sense, what's happening maybe is there's a coating of the sound that gives it a smoothness. Some people even say forgivingness to this flesh-like effect that when vibrato's engaged, it gives you. But when it's not engaged, the amps are it's just dead quiet, and there's no crackling coming, and your volumes are down on your guitar, but the amp can still.
Is dead silent.
I think another point is interesting about this is that because the guitar is so personal, amps sometimes are a little bit less personalized to the consumer because they're generally big, black, and ugly, or they're basically behind you and loud.
Functional objects, yeah.
I wanted these to be a bit of art and also sound at the same time. And so I think that if people understood more of the importance of a really good guitar amp and a really good amp, they would realize that it's important to buy a really good amp and one that can last. Not necessarily an expensive amp for your first amp, but what is nice about these is that you can learn, and they appreciate and value. They're made in the USA. I think it's important. I think that the parts are available. I think that the people are available. And in a world where there's a lot of choices, we don't need any more products. So if
there's only 6.
Well, there's only 6 or 7 models in the entire line.
Heads and cabs and stuff. There's more, but there's really only 6 models.
That's it.
In the whole catalog.
A mono and a stereo of each.
Can we take a listen? Let's switch out. I want to hear the black one.
Yeah.
Because the black one's probably a little bit more up my speed.
That's a great amp. It's a great amp, and we'll give credence to Billy Gibbons there because really he was the guy. He was the second guy I told. I said Neil Young first. I wanted to tell because he already had been playing Magnatone, and I said let me tell Billy Gibbons, and Billy's been my benchmark of Magnatone for these master collections.
All right, we're back. We have the amp switched out. Now we're into the second series. We were looking at the brown amps. Tell me again the difference between the brown amp that we were just looking at and the black or the Master Series Magnatone amps. Yeah. Other than the design aesthetic on them, they're kind of completely separate animals.
They are. And we don't make channel switching amps that have a clean channel and
a dirty channel.
Yeah. We just chose not to do that. Even though maybe it's sometimes convenient, we wanted to have 2 separate amps. So this represents sort of the British sounding channel of a Magnatone brand. We also found that the customers always necessarily don't want vibrato or tremolo or reverb in an amplifier, and there's 2 separate guitar players that do and don't. So the brown amplifiers represent amps that have no master volume with reverb. They do have reverb, tremolo, vibrato. The black, they have effects loops and they have master volumes, but they don't have any effects. We make one model that's got a vibrato and tremolo feature in it, but really what we're learning is that the customer would prefer us to make a less expensive amp if we took the vibrato cost and tremolo cost out because they want gain or they want an effects loop. Okay. And we found that the customer for the brown amps definitely didn't want me to put a master volume on those.
So it's just better off, we're saying, separation of church and state. They're 2 separate, they're completely 2 separate different lines. For the people who want the classic Magnatone thing, they want the brown ones. Yeah. For the people that, they want the flamethrower. Now this is the Super 15, so this is just like
2 EL84s.
2 EL84s. You feel like just like a
AC15.
AC15 is 1974 X more. So this is that kind of small 112.
112. We also make it as a head, and the old Marshall PA. I'm not sure which model it was, but it was a small PA20. Yeah, beautiful, cool, cute little head. We make this model, the Super 15, in a head, or we make it with an extension cabinet, and we make it also as a combo.
And there's one size bigger?
There is one size bigger. You're right. There's a Super 59, and that has 45 watts, EL34 power. We make it with or without vibrato and effects. That's actually, it's a big amp. It's not as big as a 100 watt, which we don't make, but basically we work with some artists. Little known guy named Billy Gibbons and a little known guy named Jeff Beck are 2 of our biggest.
Who are they now? Who have they played?
Those 2 guys, man. They are.
Not just them though. You guys there's all sorts of people playing.
We were lucky that we were able to capture 2 types of customers. So really, Billy and Jeff are playing the Master Collection. Gary Rosington recently switched to Magnatone. Even Ted Nugent playing Magnatone. And then we've got, at the same time, we've got people that play brown and black. We got Kenny Greenberg and got Jason Isbell in Nashville. Both of them have one of each. And it's a really interesting thing.
The brown amps aren't going to do that.
They're not. Well, you'll get power amp distortion out of the brown amps. The black amps, you'll get preamp. Gibbons really has been a catalyst for this because when I first came to him, he said, you asked earlier about how close are these to the original Magnatones, and Billy said, that wasn't my sound. And I'm like, okay, well, let's make that sound then. And so the M series of the Magnatone line back in the 60s, around 62, they had a wraparound grill and sort of an automotive look.
Yeah.
And so they also had a lighted logo that was the M logo on the top. And so what we did is we morphed the cosmetics of the M series into, I think, a more elegant amplifier that has an automotive type look to it, and that's what this is here. We took the same identification of it being different than the Brown and turned it into a different sound as well. So this, as I said, has a master volume. But these are unique little points of quality that you mentioned earlier. The Magnatone logo is all lit with individual incandescent light bulbs. Individual. And these are solid brass vents that have been nickel plated.
Is this Pennsylvania Amish rubber here as
It
well?
is
Or
not.
this is
It
a
is
different
not.
handle.
No.
Different handle.
No, no handle, no rubber. It is rubber, but this is 100% cotton
Same
covering.
kind of cover
It
on
is. And the interesting thing about, you can't really see up here on the controls, but the knobs are custom made too, because as I had said on the brown amps, the line sometimes disappeared.
Fades, yeah.
On the black amps, it seems like if you're going after a British sound, a lot of them people use a Marshall knob, it seems like. And that's really unfair to Marshall because everyone's ripping off their look. So I wanted to make a unique looking knob, and also a knob that would let you see where the line was at a distance and not have to walk up to it and see this little line. So these knobs are all engraved with a white line on them. And there's basically a layout of gain, master, treble, mid, bass, presence. There is one unique feature on this amp. It's a feature that we only put on this amp because it's 15 watts. It's a power, you could call it a, what is it, power soak of sorts?
Kind of like an attenuator.
It's not an attenuator as much
like
as
a headphone amp, really.
It's a headphone amp. That's right.
Check this out.
Yeah, so really what it is it's basically an amp that has the ability to disconnect this. You can disconnect the speaker, turn the ohms to 8, plug your headphones into the back of the amp, and then there's a separate volume control for your headphone level. And all the controls on the front are operative. The power tubes are cooking, and you're able to control the level of your headphones.
So you could seriously dime this amp and just listen to it on a set of headphones.
It's totally quiet. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's only available on the 15-watt one.
It is.
Very cool feature.
The other unique thing about this, and the well, we wanted to make the amps are not an inexpensive investment, and as you said earlier, the parts are equal to what you pay. This amp has no parts cost spared, but we did reduce the cost to make it a little bit more affordable for someone that doesn't quite want to spend over $2,000. So this is mapped at $19.99, and we make a like partner to this in the brown category called the Varsity Reverb at $19.99 map as well. And there's no cost spared in the parts. It's really that we took a few features out. So the brown amp doesn't have vibrato or tremolo on it. It has reverb. Okay. But the black amp is no vibrato or reverb, but it's got master volume. It's got
the headphone thing is pretty cool.
Yeah. So really this is a new for 2018, which it's almost at the end of here. And basically, at $19.99, they're very highly serviceable too. Another thing that we wanted to do before coming to market with any of these was to get them inspected by our trusty amp repair guy, Bob Dixon, who's a Southern California guy here.
Yeah.
The amp hole. Bob Dixon came to St. Louis before I had the product done. All the models, this is our 5th year in business now, and Bob came to St. Louis and inspected them all from a serviceability standpoint. And I said, tell me what we were going to need to fix if I have these things go to market and then bring them to you. So tell me now. And he found a couple things that were user-friendly, to get your fingers in there easier. Everything's service-friendly, though, on all these amps.
I mean, for the most audiophile of audiophile, for the most guitar nerd of guitar nerds, for the purest of the purists, man. If you guys haven't played one of these, I highly suggest trying to get your hands on one of these. These are absolutely fantastically made amps and totally different on both sides.
Yeah.
Good work, Tim.
Well, it's an honor to be at Norman's Rare Guitars.
They're available at Norm's if you want to come by and take a look if you're in the Southern California area. Really, really well built. No detail spared, and just
we appreciate
really
it.
killer
and
stuff, guys.
You guys have a lot of choices in your world, and you, as a vintage expert, know, in my opinion, sometimes you know more as a vintage retailer than brands themselves that have a vintage legacy. And so it's an honor to be part of your store and carried at your store. So thank you.
My pleasure to have you. Ted Gornblum from Magnatone Amps. Check him out. I'm Mark Agnesi for the All Guitar Network. Peace.